top line is national insurance.
2%.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hot if you're earning over £50,000.
Does it then I think was £8 a month?
So it's about, they reckon average, what was it, about £300 it's going to save you?
Yeah, something like that.
Most people about £150 a year.
So, that's about a pint, isn't it?
Yeah. They're going to bring in also, they're going to pull in the national insurance that's going to come into effect in January.
Which is revealing because?
May election.
That's what everyone's saying.
That's what everyone's saying.
Because typically it would be the start of the next financial year, correct? Rather than January, but January gives it enough time to kick in for May. I would just like to do a little bit of housekeeping, if I may. Everyone's saying tax cuts. That's what they're all saying. And I think that is a lie. And let me tell you for why. And I also rhyme. The cuts that he's announced amount to about £10 billion, roughly. However, because of the freezing of the tax thresholds that this government has implemented, these cuts still don't. The net of it is still an increase in tax. Like, taxes are way higher now than they were in 2019. So to suggest that like this budget is tax cuts, I think is dishonest.
You're focusing on the wrong bit, though.
Oh, am I?
You're
Tell
focusing on the facts.
And not the vibe.
It's now my turn to be gaslit.
This is Jeremy Hunt channeling Ava.
Yeah. So what they're saying is...
Sorry, so what should I have focused on? Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're completely correct that the burden is up. Yeah. But
Tyson's
tax
forwarded.
cuts. So why don't you just shut up and take your tax cuts? We're going into an election with tax cuts. He also correctly told us that there are now more police, teachers, nurses under this Conservative government. And if you think anything differently, then you're obviously looking at the figures and not thinking with your head.
You're not supposed to know how to read.
No.
It's the whole 2 + 2 = 5 stuff, right? It's the fact that stagnation. You idiot. It's that stagnation equals stability. It's that inflation is falling, and when it was rising, obviously that had absolutely nothing to do with the government, but now that it's falling, it has absolutely everything to do with the government and is entirely our responsibility. It's that we're cutting taxes and that equates to responsible fiscal management, even though it's going to make it far harder to balance the books in the next parliament, and because the fact that some of the budgets for the unprotected officers of state are going to stay sort of in real cash terms, it amounts to something like a £16 billion cut for some of these budgets from between now and I think 27, 28. And it's just the double think, the double speak, which is so pervasive that they say this is fiscal responsibility, but it's kind of like in complete denial of the fact that public services are already in crisis. That we got 10 billion to spend, so we're going to spend it on tax cuts rather than, let's say, I don't know, pick a public service.
You're talking about fuel duty there, right? The fuel duty increase.
I think also as well. What do we got? Alcohol duty freeze as well.
Well, but that's it. The fuel duty. If they don't implement it, and they haven't implemented it yet, but if they don't implement it, that means all of the headroom that they've projected will be reduced by 43%. So, it's they're really thinking with their feet
And not their head.
No, we've told you don't do that, Ed.
So they're following their own advice, actually.
I don't think the Conservative Party is capable of interpreting the economy in any way outside of their dogma, which is that the British state is too big, and the problems, the economic malaise, is always because of the excesses of the state, and therefore we have to reduce the state. Like Sunak believes the state should not get bigger and bigger and bigger, and that is in complete denial of the fact that the British state does less than it did in 2010.
Yeah. But they keep making the state bigger, right?
Yeah.
So while telling you we'd like a smaller state, the state is too big, they make the state bigger.
I also thought one of the big takeaways was fall in household incomes from the OBR. I thought that was pretty worrying. 3.5%.
Yeah, you're going to be worse off than you were pre-pandemic.
Is the I've got it written.
Shit.
Fuck! I was not rich pre-pandemic.
I was living in a warehouse.
That warehouse is not going to have a roof. They're going to make you move back in.
There's actually not a roof on that warehouse anymore.
Oh no.
A couple of years after I moved out, it got drug busted.
So so they blew up.
Wasn't in my warehouse. It wasn't in my bit. It was like all along the top of it. Someone else owned the top of the warehouses.
Gosh.
Big weed farm.
Oh no.
Which made so much sense, like, when they said it, because that warehouse was always so hot. And it was like, why is it so hot in here? There's no heating on. There's loads of fucking lamps upstairs heating that.
Fucking grow up.
Yeah.
So yeah, 3.5% fall in household incomes between the last election and the next, which is the largest since ONS records began in the 1950s.
And that's... People aren't stupid as well, though, are they? As in, that's how they'll vote. There's something about young voters and how they perceive Starmer's handling of Israel and Palestine. That even though young people are proportionally more likely to be more favourable towards Palestine and to back a ceasefire, it has no effect on whether or not they're going to vote Labour, almost, because how they're voting is in their pockets. So you have the young people who, like Dino, who has a new build, lets his couch, his car, he lets everything, that's going to become more expensive, and he wants change. So regardless of how people are going to be, regardless of the activist left potentially deserting the Labour Party, you have the influx of normies, I guess, who are more affected by the money in their pocket than anything else.
I think that the statement poses an interesting question for Labour, because they either oppose it, in which case they play right into the Conservatives' hands of being able to say, profligate spending, 28. You could tell already, right, from this announcement, the 28 billion figure on the environment. Green transition is going to be huge for the Conservatives. They plan to hammering that. So if Labour oppose it in strong terms, it will be classic Labour, totally profligate, going to spend all your money. If they don't do that and they sort of agree either in parts or in full, they're binding themselves into incredibly strict fiscal rules that basically mean they won't be able to do anything when they're in power. So it's actually quite a it poses an interesting conundrum for the Labour Party.
It's also they're setting a lot of traps for the Labour Party, right? So the Chancellor's headroom is about, I actually had it written down, about £13 billion headroom, right? Normally a Chancellor would have about £30 billion worth of headroom. If we follow the premise that they are going into a May election, that means that the potential incoming Labour government has absolutely no headroom spending-wise. Also, most of that headroom, nearly half of it, is reliant on introducing the fuel duty, which Labour would then have to introduce. So, and if they don't, they've got this wonderful line, the Conservatives in opposition, of, you've got no headroom whatsoever. Traps.
Yeah, look, I think they're going to inherit a colossal mess. And how they handle that is going to be incredibly hard, right? Because there's this deep desire now within everyone in society for sort of an improvement in public services, an improvement in living standards. And if they're not able to deliver that, this is what I think I've said this before on the pod. That's I think Keir Starmer, he could win a huge majority, but actually have very little time to make the change that people desire, and that whilst he could be emboldened by a colossal parliamentary majority, that actually it's a very fickle majority and could fall away from him in the space of one parliamentary term.
Do you think that a tactic of saying, so the Conservatives in opposition say there is no headroom, you guys are cocking it up, could they just not be like, yeah, because of you guys? Like, yeah, look at the fucking, like, you guys were in government 2 months ago and have been for 13 years. Or do you think
they should say it exactly like that?
Well, well, they should. I don't know. People like authenticity, and it would be annoying.
How does Keir Starmer speak through his gritted teeth?
You guys were in opposition 3 months ago. I don't like being Prime Minister now.
It's quite unsettling, that.
Yeah.